Okay. Everyone's got the release? You guys all right to go? Thanks very much for joining the Attorney General and I to go through a number of significant announcements and to take your questions. A short while ago, the Cabinet met and just after that meeting I spoke with, in a joint conversation, I spoke with the IBAC Commissioner and the Ombudsman to inform them first and foremost, and now to inform you and through you, the Victorian community, that the government has accepted all 21 of the recommendations made. That's all the recommendations that have been made by the integrity agencies. This is critically important, as I think Commissioner Redlich made the point today, and indeed the Ombudsman as well, Deborah Glass, that this is a package of reform. We think that is absolutely accurate, and it's on that basis that we will implement each and every one of those recommendations on the timeline, and with considerable further work that needs to be done as outlined by the integrity agencies. We will in fact go beyond the recommendations that have been made by IBAC and the Ombudsman. And I just want to focus for a moment before I make some more general comments and then throw to the Attorney to talk a little bit about who will need to support these cultural and legal changes. We will go beyond those recommendations by doing the following. 2 years ago, we began a process of reforming our party, and it needs to be more, though, than just party rules, and more than just the rules of one party. 2 years ago, we began the process of reforming Victorian Labor, and today we begin the process of reforming the Victorian Parliament. We want to write into Victorian law that in order for political parties to receive public funding, they will need to deliver in their administration the highest of standards. Things that we have already begun the process of doing, things we've already done over these last couple of years as a Labor Party. Not an exhaustive list, but to give you some examples. Payment of memberships via traceable means. The checks and balances to make sure that the electoral roll is properly used. The production of photo ID when a person joins a political party. It's not good enough, and it's not enough to simply have those as a matter of party rules. They should be put beyond doubt. They should be the law of our state, and they shouldn't apply to just one political party. They should apply to all political parties. I'm not making any judgments about any other political party. I'm just making the point, and I've communicated this to both the Ombudsman and the IBAC Commissioner, that we will fully implement and go well beyond that by writing that into law. If a political party did not have processes and practices and plans to deliver all of those things, and potentially things like periodic external audits, as we have had, the most comprehensive audit I think probably in Australian political history. If a political party did not take those things seriously and did not deliver best efforts, best endeavours to deliver all of those things and potentially more, then they would not be eligible for public funding. Public funding which of course increased substantially when we made sweeping donation reforms at the end of 2018. Now, in more general terms, what the report tabled today shows is absolutely disgraceful behaviour that does not meet my expectations or the expectations of hard-working members of the Victorian community. As leader of the Parliamentary Labor Party and the Premier of our state, I take full responsibility for all of that conduct. That's what the top job is all about, and I apologise for it. The key point now is to drive both cultural change and practical change. The best way to do that is to deliver on each and every one of the recommendations that the integrity agencies have given to us in their report, and, as I've just outlined, in our judgment, to go beyond that. Cabinet has endorsed wholeheartedly that as a way forward, and we look forward to, for instance, the Integrity Commissioner being appointed, established and appointed, the Ethics Committee being stood up, reviews of codes of conduct and practice, codification in greater detail in relation to the role of staff, ministerial staff, electorate office staff. The list goes on. You've seen the report, you've seen all of those different areas where the agencies call for us to do more and do better, and we will do that. Apologising is critically important. That's why I'm doing it, because this doesn't meet community expectations. Some of this behaviour is just shameful and an absolute disgrace. But you need to do more than just offer words. It has to be about action. It has to be about delivering these reforms, and I'm determined for our part, because this is not just a matter for one party or a matter for the government, it's a matter for the parliament. I'm determined, and I hope and look forward to bipartisanship around this, all parties working together to deal with these challenges and to make sure that we take the decisive action in the parliament, just as we have taken 2 years ago, decisive action in our party, to make sure that we deliver on the expectations Victorians have clearly, that people act appropriately and that people in public life are serving the public interest and working hard for the public, not for themselves. I now might ask the Attorney-General just to add to my comments, and then we're happy to take any questions that you have.
Thank you, Premier, and good afternoon, everyone. And begin by thanking the integrity agencies for their important work. And as the government's demonstrating today, we are not shying away from the findings of the report. We are apologising for the conduct that any members of the government have been involved in, and importantly, we are committing to the largest overhaul of integrity system in the country. There is a good set of recommendations in the report. All 21 will be supported by the government. But as the Premier has indicated, this is about the whole Parliament, about Victorians' expectations of their representatives, and therefore there is a good starting point. An ethics committee, a bipartisan, multi-party membership involving of an ethics committee, which will be asked to help further develop the recommendations in the report, because the recommendations go to the function of the Parliament, the function of MPs more broadly, and I'm very positive of bipartisan support for these reforms. As Leader of the Government in the Upper House, it is common practice for me to deal with multi-parties, and I know that this is something that many members of Parliament will be interested in. I must say, majority of MPs, particularly as has been identified in the report, are there for the right reasons, are there for the public good. So I know there'll be a lot of MPs that are really interested in making sure that the structures, the governments, the accountability and the oversight is improved to ensure that those of us that are doing the right thing can be assured that everyone is in the Parliament is doing the same thing. So we will start very quickly in bringing together that ethics committee, which can then progress a lot of the other reforms that have been put to us from this important report today.
Just before we go to questions, I think proof of that approach and the likelihood that there will be cross-party and bipartisan support for these reforms is the fact, I think it's in the release, but I want to make special mention of this, the Integrity Commission, or Integrity Commissioner, as is recommended by the agencies, won't just be there to investigate, to recommend sanctions. They have significant powers, they have significant resources. They won't just be there for the purposes of public funds or inappropriate behaviour of that nature only. You would all know that the presiding officers and a multi-party committee, a working group, has been working for some time on a framework and a structure for instances where there might be bullying, harassment, sexual misconduct, for instance. We've seen some behaviour, particularly out of Canberra, that calls us to do more and do better as a parliament. And we will, as a result of that work, and I thank all of those involved in that work, we will fold that function into this new Integrity Commission role as put forward by the integrity agencies today. So it's more than possible. In fact, there's an example of exactly that approach working in the best interests of this as a workplace and indeed the best interests of the Victorian community, with that sense of confidence that people are acting appropriately, as they should.
Premier, you've been around this culture and part of the culture for decades. Do you regret not having acted decades ago to clean this behaviour up?
Well, look, John, I'm not looking backwards. What I would say to you is this. The truly shocking and unprecedented nature of what was going on, and that's noted, the scale of this, the unique nature of this, is noted by the agencies today in their report. became known to all of us at about 9 o'clock on a Sunday night. By 9 o'clock Monday morning, I had sacked a minister and I had set about an extreme intervention, an unprecedented intervention by our national party to essentially take over the Victorian party. We've then done the hard work. We didn't wait because there was no time to wait. We needed a sense of urgency. Jenny Macklin and Steve Bracks have worked very hard to put down recommendations. We have faithfully delivered on all of those. Now, there's more work to be done there, of course there is, and this report calls us to do more. But it also, I think, calls for us not just to have things as a function of the rules of a party, because rules can change from time to time. Rules can sometimes not be enforced. I want to put these things beyond doubt, not just for one party, but for the whole parliament. And that's where us going beyond these recommendations, I think, is a really important step. I won't speak for the integrity agencies, but when I communicated this to them, I think it'd be fair to say that they were supportive of this being, if you like, locked in. This being not a function of a party or the rules of parties, but in fact being part of the law of our state. That's where lasting cultural change will come from.
What practically can be actually implemented before June 2024? Any of these reforms
Sure.
be implemented before November's state election?
Yes, I think there are a couple of points, Simon. Firstly, this is a timeline that's been given to us by those integrity agencies. If we can, we will certainly deliver. For our part, we will deliver on that timeline. If we can better that, if we can do all or part of it before then of course we will.
What aspects?
Well, that's the first point. The second point specifically, I think the Ethics Committee, which could be stood up via motion rather than a change to the law, I'd look to have that in place as soon as we possibly can. So that's the all-party group that will sit down and do some of the detail work that the integrity agencies have called for us to do. Some of their recommendations, they've got an outcome, they've identified a problem and they've got an outcome, an end point. And they acknowledge that there's lots of work to be done between those two. I think the Ethics Committee, an all-party group, a bit like the work that was around sexual misconduct, bullying, harassment, if we can stand that up quickly, then I think we have a greater chance of getting not only bipartisan outcomes, but outcomes happening faster than they otherwise would. I'm sure there are some other elements. For instance, we're called to update some codes. Some of those have already been updated. So there will be some things that can be done faster, and I'd see that as the outside, if you like. We should be able to get all of this done before the deadline that they've given us, and we'll all be working as hard as we can to achieve that.
Will the Ethics Committee be chaired by a non-government MP?
At this stage, I think the recommendation speaks about equal numbers from both houses, and we need to make sure that we've got, and it might even go to the issue of the chair. It does. So again, the recommendation speaks to that very issue, and we'll be faithful to the recommendation.
So it's your intention to have an independent chair?
I think that's what the recommendation calls for.
You say you take full responsibility. What does that look like? Is that just you coming up and apologising?
No, as I said before, Bridget, let's be very clear. It's one thing to apologise. That's important. It is important as the leader of the government and the leader of the Parliamentary Labor Party. Whilst there's no findings or commentary about me in this report, but I take full responsibility for the conduct of those in our team, some of whom are no longer in our team. I take full responsibility for that. And you ask, what does that mean? Well, what it means is that we are going to deliver each and every one of these recommendations, and we're going to go beyond that. And I haven't just given that commitment to you. I've rung Commissioner Redlich and Ombudsman Glass today and said to them personally, we've just met as a cabinet and we are going to get this done. And that is my commitment to them. It's my commitment to every single Victorian and of course to you guys here now. And I do hope, and I'd be staggered if there wasn't support across the Parliament to get on and make these changes. And I will welcome that. I'll be the first one to welcome that.
In your evidence to IBAC, you admitted that although you weren't personally aware of brand stacking, you had heard about it, you heard the whispers, it had been going on for decades. You also admitted that brand stacking leads to corruption and serious integrity risks. Given you were aware of general nature of brand stacking, you admit that it leads to corruption and integrity risks. Why didn't you take any action sooner?
Well, Samaya, the report that's been tabled today speaks to a a series of different, well, it talks about conduct and talks about behaviour and outlines it in some detail, and it makes no, it's pretty clear that the behaviour was unprecedented, absolutely unprecedented. As soon as we became aware of this unprecedented, shameful, disgraceful behaviour, we took action. I took action, and that's a matter of record. And if I had known what we became aware of on that Sunday evening and in age commentary in the days thereafter any sooner, then I would have acted sooner. And the reason I can say that with some confidence is because as soon as I became aware, he lost his job, an intervention from the National Office began, and the important work of reforming our party and now our parliament started. I've been involved in many different rule changes and many different processes within our party over a long period of time. And we have been doing that work, that internal party work, for 2 years solidly. June 2020 is when that program aired. 2 years on, we have faithfully delivered an unprecedented intervention, massive changes to our rules, the biggest audit of probably any political party ever, where hundreds, indeed thousands of members are no longer members of the party. So I suppose I'm not accepting of the notion that things haven't been done. As soon as what IBAC and the Ombudsman themselves talk about as unprecedented, appalling behaviour, as soon as that became known to us, we have taken action. That for me, that's the most important thing. And today, within hours of the integrity agencies tabling their report, Cabinet has met and wholeheartedly endorsed all of those recommendations, and indeed some have gone beyond those recommendations, and I think that's very important as well.
So around the general nature of being aware of brand stacking inside the Labor Party, again, general comments around brand stacking having corruption and integrity risks. We know MPs and ministers raised concerns with you about sitting ministers and MPs before the June 2020 investigation. What steps did you actually take to investigate?
I don't know that that's accurate, Samaya. I don't know that that's accurate.
What steps?
No, sorry, I'm not here to have an argument with you. I answer all your questions, but you just put it to me that people had raised concerns. No, let's be absolutely crystal clear. The program airs at 8:30, 9 o'clock, whatever it was, on the Sunday night. Shocked, absolutely shocked. Not just me, colleagues, many of you I expect, and many Victorians. Let's be really clear about something, Samaya. My EA, right? My EA doesn't know where ALP head office is. She's never been there, let alone working out of there. My ministerial staff don't run the Labor Party. They work hard every day for Victorians running the government. So the notion that people, I'm just, with the greatest of respect, I cannot accept this contention that what was going on in those offices was known to people and no action was taken. That's simply not right.
But isn't the point you go?
You were aware of brand stacking.
I'm accepting of the broader point, and if we could all go back in time, maybe you do things differently. But I can't accept the notion. There are kind of two issues here, right? There are issues within the party, and as soon as we became aware of those, we have taken steps. And no, I don't think anyone could find fault with. It's just a matter of fact. Victorian branch has been taken over by the National Office. You've got Braxton Macklin step in, run the party for a period of time, conduct an audit, conduct a review, hand down recommendations. We have delivered those recommendations or are in the process of doing that. Profound changes. Many hundreds of people who were party members that aren't now. Now, is that job done? Perhaps it'll never be done. So I cannot accept this, what you put to me. The second point, though, of course, is we couldn't wait, and we didn't wait to do that internal work. That's one thing. Then there is what happens in ministerial offices, and it's simply not right to suggest that that's occurring more broadly or that that's common practice. It's just not. And IBAC finds that. IBAC finds that today.
My
Well, but
question's
that-
around
but
the broader point though. You're aware of a rumour, you're aware of rumours that there's brand stacking inside the Labor Party. What steps do you take to investigate whether or not that is occurring within government?
Well, again,
So you haven't taken any steps to investigate the rumours, even though
Well,
you admit
so
to
not-
IBAC that brand stacking leads to corruption and integrity risks.
well, no, it was put to me. No, I don't know that I necessarily. Well, again, let's not get into word games. You want rules followed, and you want people to behave appropriately at all times. And if they don't, that there are risks there, right? That's the point I was making, and I'll make the point again now. I don't accept, and you're free to conclude differently, but I don't accept the notion that nothing was done and people knew about what was going on. That's not accurate, and that's not borne out in the report today. The key point for me is I can't change what has gone on. What I can do and what I will do is deliver the reforms that the integrity agencies have recommended. In fact, we will go beyond that so that every Victorian can have faith that people in politics are working for them, not working for themselves. I would also remind you, we sent this matter to IBAC. The then Attorney General signed a letter referring this to IBAC under a process because I directed her to, I asked her to. I said, please, we need to send this to IBAC. So the notion that we didn't act as fast as possible when the disgraceful and unprecedented behaviour became known to us. The other point I make too, and again, as I said before, I'm not here for an argument. These people knew they were doing the wrong thing, yet they did it, and they went to extraordinary lengths to keep it secret. If not for whistleblowers, if not for video recordings of scenes in supermarket car parks, shopping centre car parks, if not for CCTV within offices, if not for phone taps, then we perhaps wouldn't have known what was going on. So again, they knew what they were doing, they knew it to be wrong, and they weren't necessarily advertising that they were doing it.
Are you
Does the same apply to you
comfortable?
in the red shirts scheme, Premier, in terms of
Sorry?
how that was, does the same apply to you in the red shirts scheme in terms of what was done?
Oh, no. Well, this is very interesting. Claims were made, and I'm not interested in having a debate with Mr. Somerick. He has absolutely no credibility whatsoever. And you can look to the report, and his performance today demonstrates that. So I'm not having a debate with him at all. But as I understand it, from my recollection of the report, it goes to some detail about the fact that, claims made about, well, if things aren't specifically prohibited, then they're allowed. No, that's not right. Various claims about discussions that were held between me and him back when, that's not credible either. It gave a completely different performance to the Privileges Committee at the time. So I just completely reject that, completely reject it. People were working for the party, not for themselves, they were working for the party. In error, they should not have been. Recommendations were made and they have been delivered. And we believe that that is appropriate.
You've
On that point,
accepted
can I just
all
say,
of the recommendations. You've accepted all of the recommendations in this report. So
Yep.
more evidence to IBAC. You don't accept that that politicians were in a unit and took it regarding the red shirts exempted for the red shirts
No.
report, but you also couldn't explain why you didn't adopt both of those recommendations in relation to banning EO from
Yeah.
both campaigning, but also
Sure.
taking part in the
Sure.
party.
Well, I'd probably direct you to. Well, sorry. There's a grand conspiracy being put forward that some grand bargain was struck between political parties. I think that's nonsense. Beyond that, though, what I can say to you is words that were taken out or were omitted were not for the purposes of underwriting or giving permission for this sort of deplorable, disgraceful behaviour. They simply were not. IBAC, I think, makes the point, and I'll make it in a slightly different way. The Act doesn't say that you can't get your staff to. The Act doesn't say that you can't get your staff to cut your lawns, right, or paint your house, or wash your car. But all those things would be wrong, wouldn't they? Completely wrong. So you don't need things to be line by line by line written down in an Act to know that you shouldn't do it.
Is that the reason why you didn't accept both the links of that definition, because you thought it would be obvious?
Well, again, I'd have to go back and have a look at the back and forth at the time, and I think there might have been upper house amendments as a result of this as well. And what I can be very clear on is the notion that because you weren't specifically prohibited from doing it, you could, is nonsense. Absolute nonsense. I reject that, and so does IBAC and the Ombudsman.
Premier,
On the second issue, though, I can be absolutely clear. Those words were not omitted for the purposes of giving permission to behave the way some people have behaved.
Premier, will you support
Far
IBAC?
from
Will
it.
you support IBAC releasing your full transcript?
It's a matter for IBAC.
But are you comfortable if they go down that
It's
path?
a matter for IBAC.
Can I just clear up something that Mr. Somyurek said under privilege in the Parliament? He alleged that you in the 1990s had branch stacked. Did you?
I'm not here. I've answered that question at length, and I'd refer you to those answers, and I am not entering into a debate with Mr. Somyurek. Not on that issue
you have
or
never
any
branched
issue
yourself.
at any time. I've answered the question at length, and I'd refer you to those
Answer it
answers.
really concisely. Were you a branch stacker in the late 90s and early 00s?
I have answered the question at length.
Sorry, I wasn't there. Do you mind?
Well,
do you
no,
mind answering
no,
it
no,
again?
no, and there's nothing wrong. There's nothing wrong. In fact, all political parties encourage people to join their political party.
Yeah.
There are rules. The rules should be followed. I can also make it very clear to you that I don't have my staff running the Labor Party out of my office. I don't behave the way some have behaved and is catalogued shamefully in that report today.
So
I don't. I never have,
Sure.
nor would I.
Given
So
that you're not-
I've well and truly
you're
answered
not
your
out of
question.
Somyurek,
I've well and truly
but
answered your question.
It is commonly discussed that you were a branch stacker in that period. Is that accurate or not?
I've answered that question, John.
What?
I probably can't be
Is that
any.
a no?
Yes or no?
I've just answered the question.
Is it a no though?
I just answered the
No,
question.
you didn't.
Yes. Well, John, I'm not here to have a debate with you.
Yeah.
I just answered the question.
Well, so when I write the story, it's no, I wasn't a branch stacker. Is that
Well, you
what
can have a look at the tape, John, because I just answered it. I just answered it.
In,
I absolutely answered it.
in 2015, your cabinet had
Completely
a model
consistent with the way I've answered it previously, because that's the truth.
Your cabinet had a model for a parliamentary integrity commissioner, and it didn't proceed that and went down a different path. Why wasn't the parliamentary integrity commissioner suitable back in 2015, but it is now?
Because we've got an Ombudsman's report, an IBAC report, that says we need to take this step.
But why wasn't it adopted at the time? What was the
I don't know. We went down, as you said, we've made a number of reforms in these areas. There are always choices to be made. There are always different models, and clearly we didn't have a recommendation to do what we now are called to do, and what we've now decided as a government that we will get on and do.
But there was a recommendation that went to your cabinet that wasn't adopted. So was there a reason
Well,
for that?
no, Matt, I don't recall recommendations going to cabinet. I don't know where you've got that from, and I won't be here talking about what happens at cabinet, other than the decisions of cabinet. But there's always decisions to be made about these things. The key point here is not what did or didn't occur 5, 7, 8 years ago. The key point is what's going to occur in the coming weeks and months. And I can tell you, for our part, we're going to be working very hard to deliver each and every one of the recommendations that have been made, and indeed to go beyond those recommendations by not leaving these matters to be simply a function of the rules of a party. They should be the law of our state, and that's what we will deliver.
IBAC also uncovered a scheme in which party fundraisers were held, tickets were sold via cash, and that cash was used to pay for memberships, branch stacking memberships. You've appeared at some of those fundraisers. What due diligence steps did you take to ensure that the scheme or the fundraiser wasn't being used for branch stacking purposes?
Well, the first suggestion of that has been made in evidence that's been led. So I don't know that any special due diligence would have been entered into, Samaya, but the active assumption would have been that it was a fundraiser for the stated purposes and that it complied with all relevant laws and rules.
So you have general ideas about the rumours that you're hearing regarding branch stacking, regarding fundraisers. You don't take any due diligence steps to ensure that you're not, I guess,
Well, no, sorry, I'm terribly sorry, Samaya, but again, with the greatest of respect, at no point does the report today talk about me confirming rumours about fundraisers.
I'm talking.
No, but you just put it to me that I should have taken due diligence on fundraising rumours when I've not confirmed for you or anybody else that there were any such rumours. I don't think there were, actually.
It's in the report.
Fundraisers?
Schemes in the report.
But I confirmed that I knew about that, did I? Is that in the report too?
No, I'm not
No,
saying
it's not.
that.
But
I'm
you
just
just did
saying-
those, Samaya. That's the thing. You just did. You just put it to me, the three things together, and it's not accurate, can I
So
say?
you didn't know about fundraisers being
Well, no.
used for grandstacking?
No. I'm more than happy to have our record, the record of my government in relation to donation reform, held up against any record of any politician in this country. And that did not happen bipartisan. It had to be, all the heavy lifting on that had to be done by our government, and we're very proud to have made those changes. There's now further changes from an integrity point of view that have to be made, and we will make them. I'm not here to have a quarrel, but you can't. I think I would say to you, I'm entitled to point out when you're kind of drawing a conclusion from the report that the report doesn't make. At no point have I acknowledged those issues of fundraisers, that I knew about them, or that there was a sense of rumours or talk or general knowledge. So no, there wouldn't have been specific due diligence done on that. We would have had an active assumption that if you say you're raising money for the party, that's what you're doing, and that the relevant laws apply.
After the 2018 election, we welcomed Adam Saunders back into Parliament. He described him as your good friend and that he is a better man than he's ever been. Do you regret making those comments, and do you regret bringing him back into Parliament?
Well, the caucus determines who goes into the cabinet. I'm coming to that. The first point is, though, again, it's important that we're all as accurate as we can be. It's not just like some recent vacancies. They were appointed by the caucus, not by me, just as the ministry in 2018 was appointed by the caucus, not by me. Yes, on those comments, clearly I was wrong.
Premier, all the findings in today's report, they're all about the Labor Party, they're about the party you lead. Is it a bit rich for you to now, as a Labor government, to determine how other parties should behave and should affect?
No. It'll be a matter for the Parliament to determine. That's about changing the law. So we're going to put before the Parliament, at the appropriate time, changes so that if you don't have the highest of standards in your political party, no matter what political party it is and no matter what period of time we're talking about, now or in 5 years, Greens, Labor, Liberal, whoever it is, if you don't have those processes, like, for instance, auditing and all the other matters I went to before, then your public funding is at risk.
To lead that process, don't you need to have clean hands?
Well, this is the point that I've made to you a number of times. We've already done this reform. We've been doing it for the last 2
You
years.
think the Labor Party's fixed?
No. I think. Well, hang on. I don't know where that question comes from. I think about 10 times today I've indicated to you that work's not done. And a moment ago I think I made the point that perhaps it'll never be done. That vigilance, that sense of always looking to do more and do better is a really important thing, particularly when you're talking about political parties that receive public funding. And I was very specific before. I'm not casting aspersions on other political parties. I'm not here to comment on them. But I do think there is some merit in putting these matters beyond doubt, so that it's not a function of the rules of a party. It's the law of our state, where you've got an independent umpire, the Victorian Electoral Commission, who can oversee that and can make sure that due diligence, to use Samaya's term, as well as best efforts are being made to audit the lists, to make sure people are who they say they are when they join, that they're paying via traceable means, and there may be lots of other things that can be added to that. I'm not for a moment making the claim he just put to me, but it would be wrong to make that claim. But it would be equally wrong to ignore the fact that we have made profound change over the last couple of years, and there's still more to do, but there's a lot has already happened, and we didn't wait. There needed to be urgency, and we've got on and got that done. We did have to, of course, wait for this report, and now we'll implement with that same sense of urgency. And to Simon's earlier question, if we can beat the timelines that have been laid down for us, we will.
A lot of taxpayer money has been misused. Will the party pay that back?
Well, not misused by the Labor Party or for the. They weren't working for the party, these people, Sando. They were working for themselves.
They were doing party work.
No, they were not working for the party. They were working for themselves. And that's what's absolutely shameful about this. Any misuse of funds is obviously terrible and shameful, but the extent of this, the breach of trust, the complete refusal to do the tasks that you are sworn to do, and in favour of that to be behaving this way, is, as I said before, it's absolutely disgusting behaviour.
So that's a no. And for yourself,
Because, as I've just indicated to you, these people were not working on behalf of the Labor Party. They were working on behalf of them. No, they were not. They were working for themselves. For themselves. So that question would be best directed to them. Some of whom are not even members of the Labor Party anymore. So, again, where people were campaigning in error, monies were repaid. Absolutely, as was appropriate. And reform was made, and we understand all of those issues. This is no less serious. In fact, it's much more serious in many respects. But it's not as clear-cut as that. I think I've answered your question. You may not be happy with the answer, but that is the answer. They were not working for the. They were not authorised by the Labor Party. They were not campaigning for the Labor Party. They were campaigning and working for themselves. So best you speak to them.
you've admitted responsibility, or you've taken responsibility to apologise.
Yes, I have.
Are you the best person to lead this reform?
Yes, I am. And I'm absolutely focused not just on delivering this reform, but delivering on all the promises that we made to the Victorian community. Now, our values. Sorry?
That this has happened under your watch. What faith should the community have that will be fixed under your watch?
Well, as I said to you before, mere hours after it became clear that Mr. Somyurek was behaving the way he has now been found to have behaved in great detail, he was sacked. He was sacked. Hours. Party reform has been well underway for the last 2 years. So the mere fact that we have spent the last 2 years under my leadership trying to clean this up and making massive reforms within our party is proof positive that we will get the job done in our parliament as well.
But you acknowledge in the report it's much broader than moderate Labor. Branch
Yeah, again, you can draw your own conclusions. Yes, that's there in black and white. But we're not. Well, hang on a minute. We're talking. Yes, and that's exactly what. And that's the whole thing, Sando. The work that's been done is not about one group in the Victorian branch of the Labor Party. The audit was of everybody. We now have one branch per state seat. We've had the biggest audit in probably in Australian political history. We have everyone, regardless of your tendency, your viewpoint, your geography, your personal characteristics, who your mates are. Everyone pays by traceable means. The list goes on and on and on. That's everybody. That's not just for one group or one part of Melbourne or one part of Victoria. That applies across the board. And those protocols, those rules, those practices shouldn't just be a matter for a party. They should be a matter for all parties. And instead of being part of party rules, they should be part of the Victorian law. And that's exactly what we will get on and deliver. Well, having just stood here and said to you very clearly that I take full responsibility for what has occurred and I apologise for it, and I am now committed with my team, not just to continuing the work that we are well and truly underway, 2 years worth of work to reform our party. We now have to do the hard work to reform our parliament, and I do genuinely hope that I'm joined in that work by other party leaders. I don't know that I could be any clearer than that.
But you commit to remaining Premier if you're elected in November again to see all of this through?
Simon, I never take anything for granted. I've got a job to do right now, every day. I work very hard to do that job. My exclusive focus is delivering on our commitments and working hard to keep the people of Victoria safe and to make sure that we are a strong state, a fair state, and that we deliver on all the commitments we've made. part of my job is to put forward a positive and optimistic plan for our state's future, and I will do that in the months leading up to the election at the end of this year. And then it will be, and then, well hang on, you've asked me a question, a relatively important question. I'm trying to answer it. A positive and optimistic plan, and I will deliver that, and then it will be a judgment for the Victorian community to make. And I have never taken their judgment or their support for granted, nor would I ever. I serve at their pleasure, and I will work very hard, as I always have done, for so long as they give me that work to do. Easy days and hard days, doesn't really matter. You've got to get on and get the job done, and that's what we've been doing for a few years now, and it's what we'll keep doing if we're given that great honour and that great gift at the end of this year.
The IBAC and Ombudsman were unable to refer Adam Silver and Marlon Kairos on CPP for prosecution. They've made adverse findings against them and also encouraged Parliament to refer them to the Religious Committee.
Yes.
The government support referring those to employees.
That's in the first instance. I think that process is well known to all of you. There's issues for the presiding officers to undertake their privileges themselves. I wouldn't cut across that, but I think it is. I think they are points well made by the integrity agencies, if I put it to you that way. But I wouldn't want to cut across a due process there. In terms of, what was the first part of you? Yeah, I don't want to be drawn on that issue. I think the IBAC Commissioner, maybe both, were asked this question today and they went to it. I'm not a lawyer. I know that the standard of proof, the burden of proof, not just here but in other states, is obviously high. So I just direct you. I think they've gone to that in some detail, so I wouldn't offer up a view on that one way or the other.
Can I just also clarify the recommendation? So it calls for a Parliamentary Integrity Commissioner to teach, MPs on bullying, harassment, and it's an avenue for also people to complain about
Yes.
MPs' behaviour.
Yes.
Will you also extend that to how referrals are made to IBAC? So currently, if someone wants to complain about an MP,
Yep.
they have to go by a presiding officer.
Sure. So, yes, I think it does. And the key point of, and again, one of the strengths of the recommendations that have come forward is that they're very clear on what the endpoint needs to be. They're clear on the problem that needs to be fixed, but they acknowledge that I think there's a lot of technical work, a lot of detail that needs to be done, and there needs to be ownership. Everyone needs to agree on this so that everyone's covered by it. And it does genuinely change culture, not just in one party or at one point in time, but has an enduring benefit across the whole Parliament. So the way I'd see this working, and again this will be subject to all the process I just talked about, if a complaint was made, it wouldn't be made to the presiding officer and it wouldn't have to go to IBAC. It could go to the Parliamentary Integrity Commissioner, who's got the skills, the experience, the resources, the powers, and is designed to deal with exactly those sorts of issues. So someone is suspected of doing the wrong thing, a complaint can be made, it can be investigated, all of the details of that and the process would have to be worked through, of course. But it would kind of perform some of the functions of IBAC and the Ombudsman with an exclusive parliamentary focus, which is what they're driving at. Rather than them having to do this work, it could be done by someone who is, if you like, bespoke for that particular work. So I think that's absolutely the way to go. Part of accepting recommendations that do say, but you've got to do more work, is I can't answer every question today, but we'll waste no time doing this. And I think the key point here is to get that ethics committee set up fast. All parties, people with experience, and we can sit down in a sense of cooperation and try and work through that. There is a recommendation about non-MPs. It's not that, the way I read it, commentary's been a little bit different, but the way I read it is that we should consider it, not that we should necessarily, hard and fast do it. Yeah, and not necessarily for every bit of work that they did. We're absolutely happy to look at that. Part of accepting the recommendations is that we accept, yes, that should be looked at.
Part of your transcript from the evidence was included in regards to your knowledge of the measures in time. It seems like you acknowledge that you understood that it existed, that it was a pooling arrangement, but you didn't understand some other details. Can you just clarify what you actually knew at that time? Because it's not exactly...
No, Mark, I'll take you to what I said at the time. I've been drawn on this numerous times, and I've been consistent and clear. Yeah, well, pooling arrangements are long-standing. These pooling arrangements were known and it was people acting, as was clearly found by the Ombudsman and indeed by Victoria Police when people were exonerated and the matter was closed, that people had acted in good faith on advice, as they interpreted that advice from the Department of Parliamentary Services. That was clearly wrong, and that was found to be clearly wrong, and it's on that basis that monies were repaid. So there's nothing new in that. I've gone to that at length on numerous occasions.
One of the recommendations is also asking Parliament to consider examining whether or not the family members of MPs should be banned from working for other, like Labor MPs, for example. What's Government's position on that?
Well, we accept the recommendation, which is it's in two parts. As you say, close family members should not be working for their close family member, and I think there's more work needs to be done on the second issue. I think that's what IBAC's calling us to do. But I'll be really clear with you, Samaya, I wouldn't want a situation where if you did, as I recall the way it's structured, if you did A and not B, then that could very well be used to subvert A. So people should be employed based on merit and talent and their ability, and it's important that that's beyond doubt. And the close family tie issue that you raise and that IBAC and the Ombudsman have raised is an important part of that.
And will the first part come into effect?
So definitely A, and I think probably B, but we just have to work through that.
And definitely A, when will that come into effect?
A is close family members, yeah? As soon as we can get it done. Like there are timelines for all of these things.
An EO employment is DPS.
Yes, there's a whole bunch of reforms that are, well, some review work and some strengthening and some other commentary about the Department of Parliamentary Services, and we should. I would direct you to that, and we've accepted all of those findings as well.
So, Attorney, can I just ask you one question before we get into it? Just one thing that was surprising to me, I'm interested in your views. Why wouldn't there be a case of misconduct in public office against Mr. Sommer, just on the evidence that's been put forward to the inquiry?
Well, that's exactly a question for IBAC and the Ombudsman. They've conducted their investigation and provided findings and have decided that the next course of action would be for the Parliament to consider its options, and it specifically references the Privileges Committee. Further to what the Premier said, there was an upper house motion in relation to Mr Somyurak, and he has been referred to privileges. It's not for me to give a commentary on what happens once it goes to privileges, but these are matters that there is the opportunity for the Parliament to consider action, sanctions, opportunities for further exploration of those issues, and that may occur.
And will that process be wrapped up before the election or in this term, that Privileges Committee process?
I can only speak to the wording of the upper house motion in relation to Mr Somyurak, which had a deadline attributed to that, and unless the Privileges Committee seek an extension of that, I would expect that that timeline would be met, and particularly if you look to the report, the IBAC Commissioner has indicated that his work could be considered by a parliamentary committee such as Privileges.
Given that the IBAC found adverse findings against not just Adam Somyurak but Marlene Kyrus, do you both intend for her to remain in the Labor Party?
That is a matter for the party. In relation to Marlene Kyrus, as you know, she's been away from the Parliament for a period of time following a terrible tragedy in her family. And I won't add to the trauma of that tragedy by offering up opinions beyond that. It's a matter for the party.
So should Adam Somyurak remain in Parliament now?
That's a matter for Privileges.
Just because we haven't seen him in a while, the mask mandate, the mask strong recommendation.
Haven't you?
Was referred
It seems
to-
like I was with you just yesterday.
Yes.
I wasn't. It was Sunday and Monday I was with you.
It's being enforced as a mandate at some schools.
No, hang on.
See something similar in
No,
public
hang on a second. There's only one person who has the power to issue mandates, and that's the Minister for Health. The Minister for Health has issued no such mandate.
It's being enforced as a
Hang on,
mandate.
has issued no such mandate. There's strong advice, if you're indoors, to wear a mask. That applies in all settings. It is mandated on PT and hospitals and aged care, all those ones we know about. There's no mandate. It's not compulsory. There's no sanction if you didn't. It's strongly recommended. Nothing more, nothing less. That's the fact of it.
Do you think, given the cases of spiked and hospitalisations have spiked, you might ask for further advice anytime soon?
No. The Minister for Health under the Act receives advice. She receives advice routinely, regularly. If you're asking me, is it my view that these rules are going to change? No, they've only just been made. And I'd also make the point to you that the National Cabinet on Saturday, and again, I'm not here to comment and be a spokesperson for other premiers, but I think it's fair to say, my takeout from a conversation where we went round the room, you're not going to see mask mandates anywhere in the country, but you will see consistent advice from the national government and state and territory governments that it's highly recommended, strongly recommended, that people wear masks inside. People act on their symptoms, get tested, isolate. We'd all like to change the ISO period down to less than 7 days, but right now is not the time to do it. I think there's unity around all of that, and that's obviously a good thing. Yeah, there's a review. Sorry.
Why are they upset?
Well, there's a cost of living issue, and I just say, of course there is. There's cost of living issues across the board, and that's why we have got a $250 power saver bonus where literally hundreds of thousands of people have registered for that. And I'd encourage anyone, go to compare.energy.vic.gov.au, save on your bills and get $250 in your pocket. So instead of putting money into greedy energy companies' pockets or having money in the government's pocket, it can be in yours. That's a wholly good thing to do, and that's direct action on the cost of living. In terms of the specific issue around tipping or around these particular trucks and the work that they do, I understand there's a review going on, and that will be concluded soon. And we remain committed to working with all parties around that.
We keep talking about mask mandates as though it was still in 2020. Like, what happened in school during us is how
We're in furious agreement now, Samaya. We keep talking about these things as if there's no vaccine. There is a vaccine.
We know about
there is.
Airborne, obviously, we
Yep.
know it's airborne. We know about the importance of the quality of ventilation.
Yes.
We need to start targeting our efforts towards that as opposed to recommend masks, but really...
I agree with you completely. But I think in agreeing with you, I'm obliged to point out that it's not about starting. Like, we've got 100,000+ of these ventilators in classrooms across the whole state. Small businesses and larger businesses, grant programs, partnerships at an industry-based level. We've been working with industry, businesses large and small, around these issues, around airflow and all of those things. Because no business wants their staff to be sick, let alone their customers to be sick. I'm happy to have a look at it. I don't have advice that says there's a problem there, but we can always do better, can always do more. But I just wouldn't want anyone to think that we weren't, well engaged and well into this space. We absolutely are. We're meeting with Paul Guerra the other day, talking about these very issues. Meeting with the AHA the other day, talking about David Canny and talking about these issues. So people know about it, and they know that doing everything they can to keep their staff well means that their business will be more profitable, which is what we're all about. That would be a matter for the presiding officers, but I think it highly, well, I'll put it to you this way, it's highly recommended to wear a mask inside. It's inside. I'll be wearing a mask and probably take it off if I, am called upon to speak. No other issues? Thanks very much, everyone.